Tervetuloa kaikki. Very welcome everyone. My name is Simon Hyldén. I work at Journalistiliitto as the head of member services. And from Journalistiliitto we also have here Nina Porra back there in that DJ booth in the back corner. She is the head of training at Journalistiliitto. And yes, welcome everyone to this joint event with Journalistiliitto and Google News Lab. And this presentation will also be streamed live. And so welcome everyone who's watching this behind the screen. And because of the fact that this will be streamed, I wish that every one of you could save the questions to the end of the presentation. But now let's go to tonight's main character, our guest of honor, Matt Cooke from Google News Lab. He will tell us about different tools for journalism. Very welcome, Matt, and a big applause for Matt.
Thank you very much. Hello. Firstly, thank you. I'm going to try and pronounce this properly. Thank you to Suomen Journalistiliitto. Nearly there. Thank you very much to the organisers seriously for their help in putting this event together. Thank you very much for all the technical staff who will be making this possible, for those on the live stream as well. Thank you for coming. I understand the weather is always like this in Helsinki. Yeah? Yeah, right. I'm from London, so I know. But it's not maybe not as summery as this always. So thank you very much for giving your evening up for this as well. So we are together for about an hour and a half. And I'm going to be presenting in English. Again, apologies, that's my fault. But if I'm going too fast at any stage, please raise your hand and I will correct myself. So, hello, I'm Matt Cooke from the Google News Lab. I've been at Google for about 4.5 years now. Before that, I was a journalist at BBC News for about 7.5 years. And one of the first questions I normally get when I'm speaking to journalists is, why or when did you move from the BBC to Google, and why, and how did that happen? So I will just address that question first off. For me, it takes us back to 2011. When the BBC and London was getting ready to host the Olympic Games. The BBC had to get that right. It was a one-time only event, no dress rehearsal, and many of the digital projects that the BBC started to experiment with were quite interesting. They were thinking about social media, thinking about small cameras, giving the audience a camera. And so that kind of project work led me to think about digital storytelling. And that is what eventually led me to join the Google News Lab team. So, what is the Google News Lab team? Well, we've got some amazing screens behind me, and you can see the 4 pillars of our work. So our mission is to collaborate with journalists and entrepreneurs to build the future of media. 4 buckets: trust and verification, data journalism, immersive storytelling, and inclusive storytelling. So this shapes our work throughout the world. We're a team of, say, 15, 20 people, largely people who have experience working in a newsroom or for a publisher. And we're there to bridge the gap between journalists and product teams at Google to offer feedback from people like you to the product teams directly. And these are some of the focus areas. So let's go one by one, explain a bit more. Trust and verification. Clearly a very hot topic right now, but has been an issue for journalists ever since there was journalism. Trust. How do you verify your sources? Data journalism. How can you help your news gathering or maybe visualize your stories with metrics? Immersive storytelling. What if you are a freelance journalist and you have a mobile phone and you want to create a piece of 360 technology? What about you're an international news organization and you want to create your first experiment in virtual reality? What about everyone in between as well? These are the different projects we're thinking about when it comes to immersive storytelling. And lastly, inclusive storytelling. What are the voices or the different sources of news that maybe are less well known? Maybe there are voices on places like YouTube that people should have a think about too. So they're the 4 areas, and that's the team that I'm on. Let's look at what we're here today, though, for. It's to look at tools for journalism. And as I said at the beginning, my background is editorial. I'm not the tech expert, sorry. But if you have questions I can't get to today, then I promise to come back to you on email with a proper answer from someone who can give you that technical answer. I'll try my best, though, so be patient with me. But we're looking really at the tools for journalism. Quick question to those here in the room. Who here has heard of Google? One, two, a couple of you, thank you. It's safe to say Google does not have an awareness problem. People have heard of us. If you're a journalist, you might have used one of these tools before in news gathering or research some way. But until about 2.5 years ago, really, if you had a problem with one of these tools, it was quite difficult to get hold of someone at Google. So the News Lab team is there to be that bridge, that gap stop between yourselves and the product teams. So now if you have a question or a problem or an issue or feedback about any of these kind of tools, we're the team that can be there to speak to. We've also corrected our learning site, so this is the first useful takeaway for this evening, g.co/newslab. That's a website for digital experts, for digital beginners, for new people to your newsroom, for you as a freelancer, or for journalism students. A whole range of different tools on there at g.co/newslab. So when you go on there, you'll see we've broken down all the different tools that you might be using to create your content on. And rather than having lots of essays for you to wade through, you'll find bullet point information in a sort of a step-by-step phrase. So 5 minutes on how to do one thing to best practice. Okay? So take a look at g.co/newslab. Before we move on, these are the 4 themes we're going to look through in the next 80 minutes or so. We're going to look at search and verification, data, visualizing with maps, and then finally we're going to finish on some immersive storytelling. Let's start where you might expect me to start. That is search. And we're going to look at verification as well. Now, you'll find lots of details of everything I'm saying on that g.co/newslab website, but feel free to take notes or to go on the website afterwards. It's up to you. Again, we're going to play a little game. There won't be too much forced interaction after this, I promise. I'll leave you alone soon. What year is this? No Googling, no Binging, no Yahooing either. I want you to think about what year this might be. It's the year that Bill Clinton is the president, 1 year before the Euro, and crucially, it is when music changed forever and the ginger one left the Spice Girls. What year is this? 1998. See, what you've done there, you've been very clever, but you've ruined the game. That is the correct answer. Very quick, hurrah. No prizes though, so no big claps, don't worry. It is also the year that Google came along. So 1998, 10 blue links on a website, and people would SMS text Google a question and get a text message back. Of course, things have changed since then. We were looking for information on things like that. We wanted to have the smallest Nokia we could at one point, and now, of course, people have TV sets in their pockets. Things have changed, and technology's changed, as has Google. If you want to see more about the science behind search, then there are 2 websites I'll direct you to. The first on the left there, Algorithms, Indexing, and Knowledge Graphs. How does search work? google.com/inside search. And then on the other side of the screen, a deeper look into something called Google Advanced Search Techniques. So more focused on how you can save time and how you can research using our tools. That is Power Searching with google.com. So there are 2 websites. The one on the right is particularly useful, but maybe you may have less time than others as a journalist. You probably don't have much spare time. So I'm going to pick out now some tips that I think, from my personal experience, might be useful for you. In this first section, some of you will know these tools already, by the way, but just treat this as a reminder. But let's look at these 3 tips. Okay. Lots of elections happening in Europe at the moment. Lots of journalists looking back in time at speeches that were made maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Whatever you think you remember about a speech, put the section of the speech you remember, or the famous quote, the slogan, into search with quotation marks at the top there, and it gives the algorithm a clue. You're looking for the spoken word, an exact phrase. In this case, I Have a Dream, of course, that comes up with a link to the speech, other articles about the speech, images, video, lots of other related content. So using speech marks, quotation marks. This time, we're thinking about an issue that lots of people have already written lots of content about. From a UK perspective, lots and lots of journalists have written about airport expansion around London. Lots and lots of debates for years and years about Heathrow Airport. You'll know your own local examples or a story that might be relevant here. But on the left-hand side, I'm typing in to search impact of UK airport expansion. All the links that come up on the left-hand side are related to one place, Heathrow. But if I'm a journalist in another part of the UK, or I have already written a story about Heathrow, I want to get Heathrow out of the way. So let's make search do it for me, rather than scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. So on the right-hand side, impact of UK airport expansion minus Heathrow. A minus symbol right next to the word you want to take out. This will pull Heathrow out of the way, and you can see now lots of different stories about different airports in that country. You know, think about the time where you have a brand new mayor, a brand new prime minister or president. Take the surname with a minus symbol and it'll pull him or her out of the equation. You can have as many minuses as you want, and sometimes this might get you to the answer more usefully, more clearly as well. Finally, this time I'm doing a story about the International Space Station. So I know the source of my story is likely to be, in this case, NASA. But it could be Helsinki City Council, it could be a police department, it could be the United Nations, whatever else. Maybe I've gone on to the website where I know the source has the information. So I've spent some time looking through the NASA website. Can't find what I'm looking for. Let's go back onto search and make search look at that website for me. So I'm typing in ISS in the top left there, International Space Station. Then I'm typing in site, and pasting in or typing in the relevant website. And now if you've got good eyesight, you'll see all the green links on the left-hand side are just links from nasa.gov, no other website. So maybe going to save you some time. On the right-hand side, this is something that, as a local TV reporter in London, I wished I had used. If you're covering local politics, or you're looking for information that's publicly available, from my experience, a lot of the budgets, the meetings, the freedom of information requests were always published on PDFs. So let's tell search my hunch. Site : the website, file : PDF. And now all the information coming up from the one website is just a PDF. Likewise, if you were to put file : CSV, and that will bring up spreadsheets, okay? It's not going to revolutionize your daily work, but it might save you a couple of seconds every now and again. What about moving away from Google Advanced Search now? You're looking for academic research. Let me make you aware of two tools. Who here has heard of the Google Public Data Explorer? Okay, 1, 2. I wasn't aware of it as a journalist until I joined Google, but essentially it's a fairly useful tool. It's a digital library. The research organizations on the right-hand side, and there are others as well, they will do a piece of research and they will choose to upload it to google.com/public data. That allows members of the public, journalists, to go on, type a keyword in, and see their report visualized in a graph that you can look at, refer to, and maybe embed. Take a look at that site and type in a keyword such as population, birth rates, or whatever else, and you'll see what kind of information is there. That's google.com/public data. Google Scholar, another maybe less well-known tool. This is a digital library, this time for academic reports and case law. So if you again type in to scholar.google.com, the websites are always on the bottom right in this presentation, you'll see a place for you to type in a term, so pollution, and you'll get up all the different articles, academic reports, and where you choose for it, case law about that topic. If you can't find something that's relevant now, create an alert, and that's the circle in red I've put there, and you'll get a link when something has been uploaded or shared on that site. Let's move on to verification, and we'll move on to a tool that has been around for a while but has become increasingly useful. This is Google Image Search, so you can see the address on the bottom right. Next time you go to social media and find an image, or next time you are sent an image by a member of the public or an organization that you work with, what do you do to start to check the information about that file? How do you verify it? One way you can begin to verify it is to look at Google Reverse Image Search. And journalists are telling me they're using this more and more often because they're using social media to news gather more and more often. So in this case, I am sent an image on my email. I will download it to my desktop, and then with my mouse, I will physically drag it into Google Image Search. Or I'll click on the Upload an Image button, and then upload it from my desktop. Or I'll paste in the web link, the URL of that image. What does it do? Well, it reverses the file and gives you some information about it. This image is one I've picked, but the story is true. I was in Hamburg a while ago, and a journalist gave me this example. This image was sent to a German newsroom by a helpful member of the public the day after a big vote in Scotland. They had a vote on their independence in 2014. And the member of the public sent this to the German newsroom and said, I took this photograph myself on the streets of Scotland. I'm not going to charge you if you want to use this on your TV or on your website or your Twitter, but just put my name somewhere as a thank you. One way to start to check this piece of content, of course, is to use the digital tools we're going to walk through. But if anyone from my company or any other digital company says use our tools and you're done, then they're wrong. There's nothing that replaces your own judgment in making a decision on whether to use or trust a piece of content. There are, though, digital tools from Google and other organizations that maybe will help that decision. Mostly when I speak to journalists, they don't say that they use content without thinking about it. They say, we spend a lot of time doing this. We sometimes spend an hour debating whether or not we can or should use an image. There are some digital tools which might help. So let's drag this into Google Reverse Image Search. And it gives us some information. Let's start to the top, where you can see in the search box we have a blue rectangle, PNG. That's the file you've added into search. And right next door to it, we have the name of the file. In this case, London Riots 2011. Something is clearly not right here. The story is Scotland 2014. Underneath it, we can see here these cubes, visually similar images. This is the Google algorithm matching the image you've uploaded, and using tags and metadata, it's looking at images, again, not from Scotland, but from the London riots 3 years earlier. Another red flag. And down here, pages that include matching images. Huge red flag. Other news organizations are already using the image you've been sent to tell a very different story. Perhaps not good to use that in this case. And the problem is, if you don't check the content, your audience might do that for you. Some Chicagoans won't drive away until spring. The no parking sign was put there for a reason. This is a reporter in the US. Imagine how many hearts, likes, followers he or she would have got. Amazing photographs from Chicago. Slight issue, they weren't from Chicago. It was Switzerland. Not 2014, 2005. So what are you going to think as an audience member next time you see a tweet from that source? You may have a question, mightn't you? In this case, you could argue, well, it's just weather, who cares? This is an image of flight MH17, the crash site. Nope. It's actually promotional material for a TV program called Lost, you might remember. And for whatever reason, someone has decided to Photoshop the logo, and on a day when lots of news organizations will be telling this, tragic story, they're trying to trick people like you out. So again, dragging this image into search may have given you some more information to make that decision. If you don't want to use Google, then here are a few other tools. This is something called tineye.com that does essentially the same thing as Google reverse image search. Independent experts who use verification techniques every day tell me that if you're going to use TinEye, use it in tandem with other tools as well. Let's think about video in this verification element. Let's go onto the YouTube first off, where maybe we'll find some of our content. And there's a range of different ways you can search on YouTube. Click on the button that says filters, and it brings down a load of these different presets. So you can look for content that was uploaded in the last hour, day, short, long durations, quality, and relevance, of course. But maybe you want to give yourself some other options when you're looking through YouTube content. Firstly, when you're finding a YouTube video, always you'll see a way to go to the channel that has uploaded that video. So I'm maybe finding a video now, and I'm going on and clicking back. This time we're going, of course, to The Economist. And as I've drawn here on the page, lots of different ways you can make a judgment about this channel. Does this channel talk about this kind of content regularly? Are they even based in the same region where this video may have come from? And maybe I'm going to drill down and see what their website looks like. What does their Facebook page look like? How credible are they as a news source? A few other ways. Amnesty International USA have something called the YouTube Data Viewer. You can type in YouTube Data Viewer, or if you're quick, you can write down the short link on the bottom right to all these examples, the GU links, which are case sensitive. This is YouTube Data Viewer. So similarly to how I got that image from Scotland and dragged it into Google image search, I'm now going to copy and paste the URL of the YouTube video I've been sent and put it into Amnesty International. And it's going to give me some information about the file. Let's take a break and go snowboarding. So, we are going snowboarding, and the person snowboarding has headphones in. They're listening and singing to a lovely song. Let's jump ahead a bit, and here we go. So she's holding a GoPro and she's filming herself. Oops, I've ruined that. Let me try again. So she's filming herself as she's going, and someone comes to join her. Okay, you get the idea. 9 million views on YouTube. And it's something that many of you will have seen before. Of course, there was a little friend behind her, the bear. When the creators of this video realized that this is being shared all the time, they've actually added an annotation to their video on the top left because they want people to go through and see how they made it. So it's become a bit of a spoof, but it's also a good example. What we're doing here, and you can see I've circled something on the bottom right of the YouTube video. That is there because I've added something called a Chrome extension. If you are looking on desktop or on your mobile for videos, then the Google internet browser is called Chrome. And that allows you to add Chrome extensions, or essentially experiments, to your browsing experience. It's free, and there are a range of different independent organizations that are creating a range of different add-ons. So a lot of these rely on Chrome experiments. This is called, though, Frame by Frame for YouTube. And again, you can see on the bottom right a link to get through to that experiment. And what this extension does is allows you to add that circle at the bottom of YouTube. That allows you to pause the video you're watching frame by frame. So in this case, the very clever people who added this bear in, maybe deliberately, forgot to add the bear in for a very crucial frame. So the bear is there for frame 49. He is there for frame 51. He's not there. He's disappeared for frame 50. So you're able to quickly tell by frame that this bear has maybe been added. So that's frame by frame for YouTube. Often you'll be typing in something into YouTube. It's a search engine, of course, and then all the different images come through. And here you've got a way to see the thumbnail. This is the image that the uploader has put up to advertise their video on YouTube, essentially. And again, another extension, this time called RevEye, allows you to right-click over those thumbnails, and using a range of different searches, Google, Bing, Yandex, and others, you can use that image and do a reverse image search on it. So it does it automatically for you. So maybe you want to find out, where is this bridge? Or is that a correct image for this bridge? It'll give you a way to make that call on the right-hand side. This is something called geosearchtool.com. I'm going to type in to the tool here a location, such as Glasgow, and I'm going to pick in a start date and an end date, and it's going to give me a range of videos that the GeoSearch tool says came from that region, that location. Let's say you're looking at a range of different social media sites to newsgather. This is another Chrome extension. This time it's called Storyful Multi-Search. And this allows you to, with one search, look across multiple different social media sites. Maybe you are looking at a certain tool. So this time we're looking for information on Instagram. and I want to look at a certain hashtag, maybe it's a location or a person or a theme, this is pico-.com, which allows you to do that with one search again. Who owns this website? This website that's given us the information about this breaking news story, who set this website up? Who.is allows you to type in a website and it'll give you the registrar data. When was this site set up? How long has it been giving news for and all that sort of stuff? What about going back in time? What about cached data? This is the Wayback Machine, also archive.org/web. I want to put in a website address at the top, so in this case again the BBC, but I want to see what was on the front page of the BBC on the 9th of October 1997, because that is important to my story. This gives you a sense of the cached data about that site, and here all the blue circles relate to an opportunity for you to go back and see what was on the front page of that site on that time. Quite an advanced tool, this one. Let's say you have an image from a location and you want to check what time was that image taken, because that's quite important to my story. Suncalc.net allows you to type in the location and the date, and it gives you, remarkably, the time of dawn, sunrise, and all the rest of it. Really clever tool. Also, my hometown, Guildford, is on there, on the big screen, hurrah. So lots of verification resources out there, but really the most important website I can show you is this one, firstdraftnews.com. About 2.5 years ago, the Google News Lab worked with a range of different verification experts to launch this site, and the objective of First Draft to help people discuss verification techniques, to help newsrooms learn from each other, and to share best practice. And so firstdraftnews.com, I think, is really an essential website for any journalist who uses social media in any way to news gather or to communicate with your audience. On there you'll find different experts, different perspectives on how you can quickly verify imagery. It gives you quite dramatic examples from big stories such as Paris and Brussels, but also gives you more of a daily need. For example, a downloadable guide. What do you need to do before you use an image in terms of copyright and in terms of verification? Also on the NewsLab website, g.co/newslab, we have a whole section of how you can use a variety of Google tools, including Google Earth, Street View, to verify images and to verify content. But again, all of these tools can be used to help save time, but none of them should be pointed to as a silver bullet. You will, of course, need to add your own analysis and judgment throughout all of these processes. Okay, that completes our section on search and verification. Quite a lot we went through there. We're now going to move into data. And from a Google perspective, this means Google Trends. Can I ask if anyone here has heard or used Google Trends before? Okay, a couple. So google.fi/trends here in Finland. There's been a website like that around since 2008. It shows verified, anonymized, and indexed data on what people are searching for on Google, YouTube, and in countries where it's available, Google News. It's a tool that we, in the last year or two, have refurbished, and I think, from a journalistic point of view, it is useful from a research and news gathering perspective. It's based on considerable data, of course, so 3 billion searches a day across Google. That's 1 trillion a year. So, of course, a significant data set. But clearly, Google has not invented data journalism. It's been around a lot longer than we have. But the Google Trends tool can, we think, be a useful tool to help you visualize stories in a compelling way. So, google.fi/trends here in Finland. There are different versions of this in different countries, and we're going to just jump off now and look at the site you have here. So let's go up here to google.fi/trends will get you here. So in Finland, not perhaps particularly useful this page here, but let's go over here to the top left, where in Finland you'll find a more useful route. Just to quickly explain here, this page is different in other countries where Google News, YouTube, and Google Search are on, and I'll show you a difference in a moment. Let's quickly move away from that. And we're going to click on these three lines, which, by the way, is Google for menu. If you see that anywhere, that means menu. As you can appreciate, my Finnish is not brilliant, so I'm going to do this in English, but there's the word for explore. And it will take me through to a more useful site for you here in Finland. I'm also not going to dream to think about Finnish politics. I'll stick to my own home country. I don't want to offend anyone. But I'm going to type in a term that you may have heard of. It can be a footballer, a car brand, a politician, a pop star, whatever it might be. Type in the term and always select the term with that second line of copy. That captures misspellings, translations, and abbreviations. Let's click on that. So we're now seeing a search interest graph. This is showing us worldwide, in the past 5 years, search interest for this topic. Now, something happened last year, June, July time in the UK, you may have heard of a story, that saw search interest for this thing spike, the highest on record for this topic. But let's add some more things up here. We can add up to 5 different terms in here. I'm going to go back in time to David Cameron. Okay, and now I'm going to go even further back. You can add up to 5 things here. Now we're seeing like-for-like comparisons. Let's change some of these settings first. Let's change worldwide. Let's show you what we have for Finland. So in this case, we have the different regions. Oops. So now we're just looking at Finland data, but as you saw there, we have the different regions. You'll know better than I if these are useful or not in this country. So in the UK, we don't have as much regional breakdown as this, so I think this looks like a fairly useful list. But I'm going to, for this story, go back home to the United Kingdom. So I can choose whatever geography I want, and I also can choose the timing. So I want to look at the last hour. Maybe it's a TV debate, and I want to see how things are changing. Are people looking for more information? Or I can go all the way back to 2004. Maybe let's just do the 90 days though. Okay, so at this stage I'm looking at the 3 colours compared like for like in the United Kingdom just in the past 90 days, and the data is real time, so it's up to the minute. What are we seeing here? Well, we are seeing a direct comparison like for like over a geography and a time zone that you select. What are we not seeing here? This is not an opinion poll and shouldn't be presented as though it is. It is not giving us a sense of sentiment. So we're not able to say more people like yellow than red than blue, and therefore more interest in blue equals we like blue more. It's not that. It's just showing you search interest compared. And crucially, from a journalistic point of view, we don't give you on here volume. All of this is indexed to 100. So you can't say in the format here, the spike in July, whatever it was, or April in this time frame, coming from February this year. We can't say that that's 10 million and that's 1 million and that's 5 million. We don't provide that data. But what we do provide is a direct like-for-like comparison, which I think can still be used to show trends and patterns. Underneath it, let's scroll down and see a bit more information. And we're able to look at some of the different terms of related queries. This is fairly useful here. Let's make it more useful though. I want to look at the regions per city. Not that useful. Let's again think about clicking on this list view, and there we go. So I'm now looking at search interest across the United Kingdom in the last 90 days, and this shows me if you flatten out the population of all the cities and towns in that country, where search interest was the highest proportionally. Because if you did it on volume, of course, in a country like the UK, London would always be number one. This flattens it all out, and by proportion of searches shows you the ranking there. So let's go back up here. I'm building my graph. I think this could be useful for my story. So over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to click on this arrow, and it gives me, let me just do that again so it's a bit slower for you to see, some options. I can embed, share, or download as CSV. For me, the most useful one is the CSV, and I'll show you why in a moment. But let's click on embed. So if you want to have this graph as part of your coverage on your site or your blog, click on embed, and you have a way for it to appear on desktop or on mobile. And here's the HTML detail here. Crucially, the preset is that this graph will remain live. So if you want to say what is search interest right now, all the time, keep that ticked in place. If though you wanted to say, look at search interest in these 3 politicians today, or these 3 football teams this weekend, unclick that button. Because if you embed this graph, and then your readers come back maybe a month later, the graph is going to look very different to how you've looked at it on that day. So make that editorial choice when you're embedding it. Another way of doing it, screen grab it. That's what the BBC do when they use this tool. They will screen grab this and treat it as a JPEG, and underneath somewhere they'll write in Google Trends. They've done that before. But the option I think is maybe more useful is here. This is Time magazine on the bottom left when this loads. So on the bottom left, Time magazine have typed in Vladimir Putin into the tool I've just shown you. Then they've clicked on that arrow and asked for a download as CSV. That gives them an index spreadsheet that allows them to create a graph in their own style, and on top of it, they've then added in bullet points explaining why there might be these spikes. Okay? This is, there you go. Another example, the top right, the Telegraph newspaper in the UK. They've typed in Theresa May, Jeremy Corbyn, 2 politicians, and again they've downloaded the data. It doesn't look radically different, but they just want the graph in their own fonts. They want it in their own style. This is The Sun. Their readers care about football a lot. And so the day before the European Championships, The Sun went onto that tool and said, where in England is search interest the highest for the England football team? And it happens that on that day, it was somewhere over in the east, near Essex. So they created their own map, they took their own photographs, and they sent a reporter down with an iPhone to create a piece of video content. Again, it's just going to give their audience a different piece of content. Lots of different examples here. Another example, let's see if this plays. Maybe I haven't given permission for this. Hurrah. This time we're sticking with UK politics. There's been a lot of it, so forgive me. ITV, commercial television in the UK. They have a political show on Sundays, and they wanted to use trends to think about search interest on the campaign. There's another tool which the trends team are able to provide to journalists, and that is the top questions about a given topic. So let's take a look at what I mean with a real example.
Again in a second, Beth Rigby here pointing out as well that the Prime Minister wouldn't attack Boris Johnson. But very quickly, Google searches tell you in unvarnished glory what people want answering but might not want to ask out loud. Now, since his election, David Cameron's election in 2015, we've looked at the 10 most Googled questions about our guests. Now, you can see some are quite vanilla. Very quickly, how old is David Cameron? How tall? Where does he live? Pretty harmless. But then let's look at the others, and you do see a bit of a trend. Now, look, how much does David Cameron earn? How much is David Cameron worth? And indeed, is he even related to the Queen? For him, he's laughing. Everybody's laughing. The problem with this is it's pretty annoying for him that about his wealth and his privilege, after 10 years at the top, he is still having to convince people that he is one of them. Robert.
Okay, you get the idea. Lots of different examples of how that could be used in different elections in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Denmark, and elsewhere. So the public tool, the google.fi/trends tool, that is where you can type in any term you want and see search interest and create your own graph and download it or embed it. To get the questions, there is an email I'll give you at the end of this presentation. You can send us an email. We would need from you the topic, the geography, and the timing you want. And then we're busy with lots of elections, but hopefully within a day or so, we'll come back to you with that information. As you saw from the example with David Cameron, sometimes the questions may not be that remarkable. How tall is he? Where does he live? All these kind of things. But sometimes those questions are quite interesting, that people are looking to know more about a topic in a way that maybe is different from what they might say or do on social media. And if you want to maybe think about data and how remarkable it can be, and also how maybe relatable it can be, who here has been on a diet in January? Didn't work. This shows you search interest in the US for diets from 2004 to 2016. Big shock. Most search interest in diets for over a decade is the first week of January. And then by about July, August, we kind of get bored of that. Something goes wrong in August. Maybe that's holidays, I don't know. But it's not maybe that surprising, but it's also quite revealing, isn't it, to see that in data. So as I said, I'll give you an email at the end, but there are two other ways to stay in touch with Google Trends if you want to know more. Twitter.com/Google Trends. On there we post frequently asked requests on a daily basis. And on the right-hand side, if you are looking to create your own visuals, then Google Trends Data Store is a good place to look at the index data that we've used previously. Lots of different examples of stories on there as well. They all relate to requests we've had in previous years. So 2 places to take a look. Let's move on to our third section now. And we're going to move on to maps. Before we look at Google Earth, I want to just make a couple of points. we've not done a very good job of being clear on permissions for Google Maps. So just to be very clear, if you are doing a story where you think it would be useful to have a map embedded or a map on a JPEG on your blog or website, then you can do that. You can either go on to Google Maps and type in a location, and in the menu click on embed and it will come up with a code, or you can screen grab it. If you click on the embed option, which again will be in the menu, then all the copyright is done for you. If you choose to screen grab it and treat it as a JPEG, then you have to add somewhere the copyright, Google Maps or something like that. And we see on a daily basis news organizations, small, medium, large, doing that. So that's Google Maps. Google Street View, again, likewise, you can use that. Most news organizations tend to use that as a screen grab, and they'll cut it down and they'll add somewhere on there a detail saying Google Street View. That's for the copyright. Many organizations use Google Street View for a breaking story, for a story that happens over the weekend, maybe when they don't have someone to go and check, or maybe they are the only person that is going to create this content. So Google Maps and Google Street View, fairly straightforward. Yes, you can use the content on there. Add in the copyright properly if you don't choose to embed. Google Earth, the answer is still yes, but you need to make sure you're adding in all of the copyright correctly. And that's because Google Earth and Google Earth Pro, which I'm just about to show you, rely on third-party satellite providers who have a license with Google to make their content available on Google Earth Pro and Google Earth. They will be looking for the proper copyright and proper accreditation. So that's about permissions, and I can answer more questions on that if we want to be clearer. But this is a lovely fly-through over Italy, and we're going into the Vatican. And this is a piece of content that was created on a tool called Google Earth Pro. Many of you maybe will have used Google Earth before, which is the satellite tool that allows you to hover over your hometown. Google Earth Pro is currently the tool that you as journalists should be using. It's a tool that we used to charge for, we don't any longer. And it allows you to create content like this and to download high-resolution imagery. So, whether you want to get a 3D image of a major international city, or an overview of a new stadium or a location, or you just want to get a sense of the terrain, Google Earth Pro allows you as journalists to download that high-resolution imagery. So the logo you're seeing there, the Google Earth globe, the white and the blue, that is the public tool. A white globe with silver lines is what you'll find if you type in Google Earth Pro onto your application store or something like that on your laptop. And once you download that, you'll be able to open up a tool that looks like this. So this is Google Earth Pro. You can see it looks a bit like Photoshop. And at the top there, you've got a whole range of presets. You can drag and crop different pieces. You can start to create a movie which takes you from one point to another. You're also able to click on the sunlight and daylight option, which allows you to see this satellite over day or a nighttime perspective. Down here, you're able, on the left-hand side, to type in any location you want. And at the bottom, we have a whole range of layers, which will help you maybe identify the location or add in some detail you want. But essentially, once you've got the image you're looking for, let's crop it. And you'll see here clearly the copyright details of the different satellite providers. There are 3 in this one, actually. These are the logos, the brands, actually the listing that you will need to put somewhere if you use these images. Many people will choose to put Google Earth / the license provider on there. That's probably the best way of doing it. But at the bottom, we have some other information. So here we have a whole list of details. The imagery date. When was this image taken? What longitude and latitude are we at? What are the height as well? The elevation, rather. The question I always get is, how often is this imagery updated? And the answer, unfortunately, is it depends. Sometimes you'll find that during a big news story, a big news cycle, satellite providers will be aware of demand from newsrooms. They'll make updated content more readily available. But often it comes down to weather. So we had lots of requests last year from Irish newsrooms that they wanted to take a photograph of Ireland in the days after a major storm, because they wanted to see those pictures you can imagine of rivers just pushing brown silt out into the sea. I thought it would be a very compelling image. Unfortunately, because the weather was still bad, Ireland was covered in clouds for weeks, so no chance to get that image. But you'll see as you go onto the tool, the data is relatively frequently updated. And it can make all the difference. This is a breaking news story. This is a hostage-taking situation. Of course, you can see it's a refinery of some sort. There's no town here. There's no stringer. There's no one on Snapchat who's going to happen to be nearby this situation. So they are trying to tell this story, the different newsrooms around the world, but with no visuals. Well, they actually went on to Google Earth Pro and were able to download a high-resolution image for broadcast or online. And I think here, this is my favorite example. The Wall Street Journal have downloaded this image and various different versions of it. And on top of it, they've added in their own editorial. And you can see, if you've got very good eyesight, this is the copyright on the right-hand side. It's not a big Google stamp on their site. It's a source, as you might source anything. Likewise for Google Trends, Google Maps, Google Street View. It's not about having a big stamp or a logo. It's just about having a proper source as you would anything else. And it can, again, be fairly compelling. So this is Serbia 2014 after a flood. This is an example from The Guardian. This is Boston, the marathon story. They've decided to go onto Google Earth Pro, and they want to highlight to their audience the finish line in Boston. So this is not, of course, an image that's happened after the attack. It is a recent image that once downloaded, they can add on their detail to give people a perspective of the story, the geography. And you can also see they've added ways for you to click on the camera and an image or maybe a video might come up too. Let's see if this one plays. This is a bit like the Vatican example, but clearly a very different topic altogether. This is the New York Times. They want to tell the story of what happened on that day in Paris. And one way they decided to do that was to create their own tour over Paris. So they've gone on to Google Earth Pro, plotted in the different locations, and then they've downloaded that flyover video. And here we can start to see it visualizing. And we are going over, I think, first to the Stade France, and in their edit, they've added in a pause, some graphic, and a bit of detail, and then we're going to a different location in Paris. For me, this gives you a good sense of how this tool could be used to tell the geography of that story in a different way. It's not going to replace video or stills or anything else, but it's just going to give people a different perspective. Another example, going back in time, this is Newsweek in Poland. They've decided to get access to some archive material. So they are looking on the right-hand side at some aerial imagery of Warsaw. What did Warsaw look like 70 plus years ago. And on the left-hand side, you have the Google Earth imagery from 2016. Let's merge them together into a video that Newsweek Poland are creating themselves. So once you play this video, it's 3.5 minutes long, but it gives people a sense of before and after. They've added some music as a narrative, but it could be a reporter explaining how that city's changed. So lots of different ways that Google Earth Pro can be used. Really encourage you to take a look and see for yourself, though. There are ways that you can create new content or maybe just complement stories you're doing already. Whilst we're thinking about maps, Street View is another tool that many people are already familiar with from a point of view of looking around a town or navigating, perhaps. What about going back in time? We are now in Manhattan, and we're seeing the site of the World Trade Center, and this is Freedom Tower going up. The Google Street View car has gone down this street in Manhattan and taken a 360-degree photograph of this site. And in the top left here, we're seeing a box of information. Let's go to Google Maps and see if we can do our own version of this. So, let's go to Oxford Circus. I don't know the examples that will be here in Helsinki, maybe not as many as in London, but let's have a look at London first. And we're going to go to Oxford Circus. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom left, bottom right even, and click on this yellow icon, and I'm going to drag this icon onto Oxford Circus. This takes me into Street View. And it's a typically sunny day in London. This is peak summer, by the way. And we're able to look around as you might expect. So notice a few things about the floor. The crossing an X. There's the BBC at the back, which is all finished. And over there we can see some buses coming through. Let's click on the link up here though, this clock with 2 arrows. And let's see what data is available from this point. And again, this won't be the same in every city. Not every city will have as much as this. But think about areas that have changed dramatically in your location. For example, I was in Oslo a couple of weeks ago. Their waterfront in the last 5 years has changed dramatically. So you can see by going back to 2009, this could be quite interesting for their journalists there. If you know of a location in Helsinki or wherever in Finland you're from, this could be something to check. But let's go back to 2009. And we're in London. Again, another typically sunny day. And this is what happens when you live in an Olympic city. Everything gets dug up so they can make it pretty for 2 weeks. And you can see a few things. These buses have been banned now. The BBC is still being built at there. And we can see a few things are different with the road. It's not going to change your storytelling forever, but it might give you a visual cue to tell a story in a different way. For example, this is what the Wall Street Journal did with it. They wanted to tell the story of gentrification in Brooklyn, how hipsters have ruined the world for everyone. This is the same street corner in Brooklyn. On the left, we're seeing August 2007. On the right, we're seeing September 2013. They've screen grabbed it, and then using a tool which I will tweet out from the Knight Foundation, they've added in this picture slider. It's not a Google tool. It's a free tool that you can add to images. And now the audience can compare 2007 to 2013. Really simple but effective visual. And of course, on the left we have convenience stores. On the right we have skinny jeans and coffee and all that kind of thing. And you can see at the top there, it's a way for them to get into 5 different essays about that part of the city. Simple idea. At the top, we have an image from Reuters. Underneath it, the image of Street View. What was there before? Lots of examples of this during the Amatrice earthquake in Italy. This is an interesting one. An older example now. This is The Guardian. They are in South London, in Balham, and they're on Street View. On top of it, cleverly, they've photoshopped on an image they have permission to use, showing World War II damage on that exact same high street, that exact moment of the street. Really effective example. So with all of these, I'd say that it should be story first, technology second. And that leads me nicely into immersive storytelling, which is our final section for today. So I spent a lot of my time as a TV journalist in the UK, and when you're thinking about telling a story visually, you have to think of sequences and you have to think of certain narratives. But some stories are quite hard to do on TV. Some stories are also extremely hard to do without a visual. So VR and immersive storytelling offers a challenge and an opportunity. And we're seeing lots of news organizations and individual journalists and individual journalism students experimenting in this space. From Google, immersive storytelling can mean 360 technology. It can mean virtual reality. And from a Google point of view, virtual reality is where mobile phones were in the late 90s. That's where we are now. Potential for lots of experiments and innovation in this space. And as more and more people have headsets, the better. But as more and more people can access virtual reality on their mobile phone, that we think is going to make the real difference. YouTube 360 is the first big bet from us. There are other equivalents from different organizations too. But if you type into YouTube 360, you'll find a whole range of videos that have been created from a 360-degree perspective. What does that mean? This is an example. We are back in Paris, and this time a correspondent, a journalist, has been sent to Paris to news gather. He has done TV interviews, radio interviews, he's written essays, he's tweeted and all that sort of stuff. He's also taken a small handheld device, under €300, back then called a Ricoh Theta, not a Google tool. Some are saying that Ricoh Theta is great, but also maybe Samsung Gear is a great handheld device that offers more high definition quality nowadays. But back then he was at this statue in Paris. He was walking around the statue with this handheld device, and he was recording a 360-degree video and gathering audio at the same time. So, they've uploaded this video, 1 minute 44. Top left, this icon here tells me that I can move my mouse around and I can look around as it plays. Or if I'm watching this on my mobile, I can move my phone and it will move with me. So let's play it.
This is what it's like in Paris today. This is the Place de la République. Most people are standing silent for a few minutes in front of this spontaneous memorial to the victims.
Okay. So a short piece of content that was probably made available on YouTube and elsewhere, not made for TV clearly, and not made to replace anything else. This took them under an hour, and by the way, he did it on his own as well. A simple way to create an immersive piece of content. It's not costing thousands, it's not a team of people, and it's something that does add value, I think, to the story. It gives people a sense of what the atmosphere might have been like on that day. So there are ways to do this in a cost-effective way. Let me show you Google Cardboard. This is a VR headset at a slightly different price point, you might imagine, to some of the others. You can pick this up online for, I think, €8 or less, or more sometimes. And here you're able to put your mobile phone in, whether you're watching a YouTube video or you're using an app from somewhere else, and you're able to explore VR. If you do have access to something called Google Cardboard, then you should have access to the Google Cardboard camera app as well. This is free. This allows you to take photographs on your phone and then turn it into a piece of content that people who do have Cardboard can look at too. Fairly scrappy way of doing things. It's a nice way to get people thinking about this kind of content though. This is a tool which I think could start to take people into the immersive direction. This is storyspheres.com. And let me find it first. So I'm going to go to the Washington Post, and I'm going to look for that one. The New York Fashion Week, as told by Washington Post, using StorySpheres. So we are on the Washington Post website, and the journalist there has gone to the Fashion Week with a mobile phone, nothing else. And now I'm able, as a reader, to click on this window that sits on their site and experience some immersive content. So, I'm able to drag myself around and see the skyline of Manhattan. There's the press underneath. Over here somewhere we've got people who weren't allowed in or didn't have tickets. Never mind, let's go away from them. And we can see the runway. Let's click on one of these icons.
It was a show that was, despite the size of it,
So an audio clip from a designer.
Music reflected six.
Let's be. There you go. So the journalist has gone with an iPhone or an Android, and they've taken a 360-degree photograph. How do you do that? If you have a smartphone, there's probably a way you can do this on your camera already. You'll be following a little blue dot around and you'll be taking a 360-degree photograph. Or there's a range of different apps you can download that will do it for you. The Google Street View app allows you to take a photograph and follow the little dot around in a way that creates a good photosphere. Or again, if you have something like a Ricoh Theta or a Samsung Gear, under €500, some of these pieces of technology, one click of a button will do it for you. Then they've gone over to the designer and done a quick audio interview again on their phone. They've then gone on to storyspheres.com, which was something that came out of Google Australia and a creative agency called Grumpy Sailor. And here you're able to upload your image and choose where your audio icons go. This is something that we are currently refurbing, and we'll have more to say about this in the next few weeks or so. But we see lots of journalism students and lots of journalism associations experimenting with this as a way for people to create their own kind of immersive storytelling without spending lots of money and without spending a lot of time on it too. So take a look at storyspheres.com, and as I said, we'll have more to say on that in the next few weeks or so. Finally, virtual reality is a space that a lot of people have a lot of questions about. How's it going to convey my story to an audience in a more effective way than an essay or a still or a video? This is The Guardian's first experiment into VR, and this did take them a while. This did take them months and a small team of people, but it has led to at least 2 awards, and really for them it was the first step into virtual reality. It's given them the chance to experiment and start to think about what does VR mean for them. Let me take you to the Guardian website. And if you want to see the full version of what I'm showing you, then I'd encourage you to go onto theguardian.com and type in 6x9. And then you should be able to find this and watch it on your phone yourself. So this is the 6x9 experience. You go on to the site and you'll be able to see a virtual reality version of a solitary confinement cell. They did interviews with a number of people who'd been in solitary confinement, and they then wanted to see what did it feel like. Let's give people a perspective. This is a 1-minute trailer, but there are of course a 9-minute virtual reality experience available on a whole range of different platforms for you to try afterwards.
Welcome to your cell. You're going to be here for 23 hours a day.
You are going to undergo many different kinds of reactions, and some of them will be more immediate than others.
Keep your eye on survival.
Memorize your space. After a while, things start to slip.
I find myself floating.
The toilet that drips.
People turn on themselves.
It's almost like you want to feel alive.
You do something to make them notice you. So, now that you're here, what are you going to do? What can you do?
6x9, a virtual experience of solitary confinement.
Okay. So a landmark piece of VR journalism. Of course, not every organization will have the ability or the option to recreate that, but a good example of what this technology could lead us to. One way to stay in touch with all things immersive, whether it's creating a piece of content on your phone or creating a landmark piece like 6x9, there's a community growing around the world, and that is on Journalism 360. This is an initiative between the Google News Lab, ONA, and the Knight Foundation. And similarly to what we're doing with First Draft News, this is a web community that is sharing lessons about how to experiment and how to test the water in immersive storytelling. And on there you'll get real experts giving you their perspectives on kit, on tips about how to film a certain kind of scenario, and also giving you their preferred top 10 VR elements every so often. So medium.com/journalism360, and you can stay in touch with that at journalism_360 on Twitter. Okay, you have done it. You have reached the end of this mammoth run through the different products and tools. I'll open up for questions in a moment, but first I'll just walk you through these different options. Email us, newslabsupport@google.com. Use that email if you want to ask a question about a Google tool or service that you want to check. Maybe you want to use mapping for the first time and you just want someone to give you some feedback on what does this option mean or how do I do this. Or you want to ask us for the top questions about a different topic on Google Trends. Again, newslabsupport@google.com. If you're from a news organization or you're here representing a university and you want a training option or workshop similar to this or longer, then again, newslabsupport@google.com. That is not the email if you have a question about Google. What does Google say about this or that? It is purely for journalists who are thinking about editorial content. Google News Lab website, g.co/newslab. We've touched on Google Earth and we've talked about Street View, but there's other tools like Google Fusion Tables, Google Geo Tools. You can find a step-by-step guide and some exercises on bit.ly/geomedialab. I know journalists don't get enough emails, but maybe you want to have another one. Then g.co/Google Media Alerts. On there you'll get details about some of our tools and how they're updating, or some information about the latest satellite imagery from a certain part of the world or other. And lastly, the Digital News Initiative, digitalnewsinitiative.com. On there you'll find more details about how we're partnering with publishers and journalism associations across Europe, including details of our training and research and the D&I fund as well. So I will stop there, and happy to take questions on any of the tools we've talked about.
Yes, thanks a lot, Matt, for a really good presentation. It was amazing to hear about all these pieces of advice that you can use in your everyday life. And at least for me, it also felt good to be a little updated on these things. Well, now it's time for questions. I have the microphone here. Just raise your hand if you have a question, or did Matt empty the bank, as we say in Finnish, when it comes to information? There we have a question.
I work with Chinese media. Will these Google tools be useful or effective if I would like to use them in the Asia? Like, because they don't really use Google, they have their own search engines. Like, what do you recommend?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the versions of Google tools we've talked about do differ from country to country. With Finland, for example, you saw the Google Trends tool is very different to the tool we have next door in Sweden or Norway or UK. In China specifically, there'll be some tools which don't work for a couple of reasons, but there are a lot of tools that we provide that are truly global. So Google Street View is available in a lot of cities across APAC, and so Google Earth Pro is also available for you to look at different parts of that region. The best thing though is to perhaps check and get local advice. And I was in Singapore recently, and the tools we're talking about today all work there, just maybe with a local nuance. I think when you're talking about Asia Pacific, and I would imagine also China, I've not been there, you're really talking about how do people find stories and how do they engage with your content on mobile first. I think that's probably, you know, largely Europe as well, this part of Europe, but that's how I would think about it as well. How are the audiences in those areas able to engage in the content?
Thank you. Any more questions? There's one from the DJ booth back there. Just a moment.
Is it a request for a song?
Thank you so much. Thanks, Matt. Since you are from Google, you probably know quite well how we Finns, or even Finnish journalists, use Google tools. Are there any special patterns or characteristics that are typical for us compared to other journalists?
It's difficult to say, not because I'm in a room full of Finns, but because I think I've been doing this job for about nearly 3 years now, and there are remarkable differences between countries in Europe. Largely, there's lots of similarities too, but if you talk about how journalists in a country like Finland operate, it tends again to be all about this. And if you speak to journalists in other parts of Europe, not always. So I think that is the main point I'd make about Finland, and I'd include in there Estonia and Sweden, Norway. I'd include the UK in there as well. Much more of a sense of, does it work on mobile? Because if it doesn't work on mobile, for your audiences, it doesn't work. And so that is really the main standout for me. But as I'm in a room full of Finns, I'll also say that they are my favourite people and my favourite journalists in Europe. Here.
Thank you so much. Well, are there any more questions? Yes, here's one.
Hi. I'm working as a production coordinator, and quite often I'm in a situation where a journalist comes to me and he or she needs a picture for a broadcast or for the internet for an article. Particularly, it's like a picture of a particular person. And I should quickly know if we are able to use the picture or not on a broadcast or on an article. And I would like to, quickly know if it's legal. Do we have to pay it? Yeah. Usually we don't have the money to pay for the news companies to buy the pictures.
Yeah.
I would like to use free pictures, but I have to know before I'm giving the picture to the journalists that are we able to use it or not.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would go back to my point that don't rely on anything 100% to be the silver bullet that replaces your own judgment. There are tools that maybe can help you make a decision, though. Let's go to Google search. I'm typing in a politician, and let's go to images. And here we go. The kind of usual images come up. Let's go to tools. And I think this is only available on desktop currently, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't know about this. And it gives you this drop-down menu. So I now want to siphon my results by, let's do size first. So I want certain dimensions for my content management system or for whatever else I'm doing, or I've got exactly different ones there. My editor says, if you don't have a orange image of David Cameron, then I'll be furious. Well, let's do a safer one, black and white. Or I want a face, a clip art. Or I want a custom date. So I want to look at David Cameron images that are available online in a particular day, month. Click on custom range, and it comes up with a calendar. This will relate to the images that people have tagged, how they tagged it when they uploaded it as well. So it will give you two kinds of results. Usage rights might get more to your particular use case. And here we have options for you to remove content that has been labeled for non-commercial reuse, reuse with modification, labeled for reuse. So basically this will get rid of images that you definitely cannot use. It won't give you images that you can use, but it'll get rid of ones you definitely cannot. And the reason why I remind again that don't always rely upon this tool is because copyright, and going to your point about differences around the world, there will be journalists who have different perspectives on copyright, and so you'll want to use this in tandem with a look on Getty Images or a look on tineye.com or Google Reverse Image Search. So the answer to your question is not quite, but this might help you in some occasions. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? If not, I hope everyone will have great use of this lesson we just heard, and thank you also to everyone following this on through the webinar. And if you didn't memorize everything today, you can find this whole set on our website on journalistiliitto.fi, and I'd also like to thank Nina for arranging everything, and last but not least, thank you very much, Matt Cooke, for coming here to Finland and giving us this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Kiitos.